somebody made a video that I saw about whether gaming is an escape for low wealth men who have nothing better to do. I thought that was interesting, and so maybe it's something we could talk about. What exactly is technology doing to our current generations of people? Certainly, there is the reality that men play games more probably than women. That's not always the case, but in most cases, I would say it's safe to say that's true. There are a few games and genres of gaming which tend to be more female dominant than men, but by and large, men tend to be the ones playing games. And it used to be that these male gamers were usually teenagers, but that's really not true anymore. It was true certainly in the 90s, I would say, and probably early 2000s. Young people were getting into computers, and the older people were, not interested in getting into it really. But today, I think there's a lot of people gaming at all age groups. There's older people playing games, there's younger people playing games, but I do think largely it tends to be probably more men than women. And yet, there is something to be said for life changing. And as a result of changes in the world, we have more people looking to gaming as a refuge. Maybe women don't play games as much because maybe it's easier for them to connect socially. I don't know if that's true. I'm just kind of batting ideas around here. But I think there's definitely a relationship between gaming and the subculture of men who, for lack of better terms, have nothing better to do. It doesn't seem to affect women as much because I think women tend to have other social outlets that they will wind up putting energy and time into. Like, I think women are more likely to be all over Instagram, posting some kind of sexy selfies or food pictures or something. Men are probably not so much going to be doing that. Like, they're more likely to be playing some kind of a game or watching content that's related to gaming or something like that. I also think, though, that there's the real issue of some people just struggling to find a place in the economy. And that's not just being able to find a way to make money. That's certainly part of it. It's becoming increasingly difficult for people to be able to get to a point where they feel like they could support a family. It's increasingly difficult to get to a point where you could say that you can afford a home. It's easier to just provide for yourself, and then you don't have to worry about it. Like, you don't have to worry about how you're going to take care of your kids. You don't have to worry about how you're going to take care of your wife. You can just have a hobby which is affordable for you, comparatively cheap, and potentially gives you the opportunity to network with a broader community. So if you figure taking up a hobby like cars or golfing or some other thing. Like, I don't know, like pretty much any hobby you can think of, if you are an enthusiast of the hobby, will potentially be more expensive than gaming. Gaming is, even at the high end, a pretty affordable hobby. I mean, if you think about it, you could put $5,000 into a really nice computer, you're going to be running a cream of the crop machine. Put $5,000 into a car and, you barely have scratched the surface of basic work. So it kind of makes sense that when people don't have as much disposable income, they put their money into things that are going to give them more bang for the buck, especially when those are things which might open up opportunities for social connections. Even if it's just passive social connections, like being able to engage with content creators in the gaming space. I do think there's something else going on, though, with women, and that is just women, I think, have gotten more superficial. Like, I saw this picture on Reddit, and it was a picture of, like, the guy who played Superman. And it was that actor, right? And some woman posted a picture of him shirtless and said, like, all women want is just, a little bit of facial hair, a little bit of body hair, and a little bit of muscle, like this guy. And it's literally the dude who played Superman. So, like, all right, there's that, right? Like, women want a guy who basically, has money, has looks, nothing special, just literally the guy who played Superman. Other than that, they don't have high expectations. Then you get involved with them and you start to realize there's the drama, there's the fickleness, there's that sense of, they want commitment until they find something better. But then there's that sense of, I can always just go trade up or trade out or go find the door. Well, so it kind of goes both ways, right? Like, it's sort of like you want to have the benefits of a committed relationship, but you also want to be able to just head out whenever you please, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to this sort of a attention deficit thing going on. Like, there's just short attention span amongst people in general. Like, we want to scroll through short form content. We want flashy clickbait sort of things all the time to be in our news feeds. We want to be able to engage in society via text messages, and maybe text messages are even too direct. So we want something like, Instagram or Facebook or some secondary medium that allows us to have the illusion of connection and followers and all of that stuff without having to actually have any kind of commitment at all. Like, we want to be able to just delete someone out of existence on a whim without any notice or forethought, just whenever we want. But we also want to have meaningful relationships and commitments and people who are going to be there for us. And I think that affects both gender groups, but I do think in some ways it affects women more. Because there's this, I guess, unrealistic expectation that a lot of them have about how life works. And some of it is not even unrealistic. Some of it is just how life works, and it's not fair. Like, if you think about it, like, no matter how much you talk about female equality and, both sexes are treated equal, the reality is there's a lot of women out there who think that they would like a guy to be the gentleman and pay for their stuff and give them, put them on the bank account and give them the opportunity to, have that stability. but they also would like to be able to just say, oh, you know what, I guess I am a victim, and then head out whenever the relationship starts to go south, whenever it starts to get hard, whenever, a couple years go down the road and it's no longer exciting and fun anymore. Then, you have all the women who will just head out and, leave the guys high and dry. If that happens a few times, can you blame guys who are already, pressured economically for kind of withdrawing into themselves and saying, well, you know what, I guess I'll just have fun, I'll enjoy my life and get to know myself and find peace and do my thing. And you know what? If I can't find the right person, then I guess I'll just enjoy my own company and call it a day. And people say, oh, well, you're, I don't know, you're incel or something. I don't know, maybe. Doesn't really matter anymore, though, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter if you want to, call somebody a derogatory term or not. Like, ultimately, people just kind of do whatever it is that feels right for them. And increasingly, as much I think as guys would prefer not to be alone, there's a lot of guys that realize it's better to be alone than to be in a toxic relationship with somebody who's going to potentially be abusive in a passive way and then act like the victim. And then you throw in stuff like the AI revolution and all of the COVID stuff and the work from home situation and the fact that inflation has happened. And now, even if you make more money, you don't have more spending, buying power. And it all just kind of adds up. Like, we start to realize that society is not just getting more financially expensive, it's also getting more socially expensive. Like, being adjacent to an HR space at work, I realize this all the time. Like, you have people who will file some kind of an ethics complaint. Well, you know what it usually is? It'll be usually some woman filing an ethics complaint about a guy. Well, you know what it winds up being? Well, I think it just is this. If a woman likes to be hit on by some guy, then it's no problem. But if she doesn't like it, then suddenly it's sexually inappropriate behavior. And you know what happens? Probably the guy is going to be the one that loses his job. Because that's just how it works, right? So then what do you do? Like, what do you do in a situation like that where it kind of seems like the cards are stacked against guys? And then maybe to kind of flip the coin and say, what is, how do guys behave? Maybe they are crass and immature and disrespectful of women sometimes. And why is that? Well, part of it is probably that on both sides of the aisle, we have the issue of no consequences, right? Like, if you can't get to a point where you're in a committed enough relationship where there's a social contract and you actually have to be true and faithful to somebody, then everyone starts to get treated as disposable. And when you get to the point where everyone's treated like they're disposable, then what really do you have left, right? Like, that kind of can wind up being a no-win situation for everybody. Because people just kind of figure like, well, I don't know, just give it the college try. It is what it is, If I'm rejected, I'm rejected. If I'm accepted, I'm accepted. But I'm not going to treat people with the kind of care and respect that I would have treated them in a different kind of a world where I feel like there's an invested interest there. Like, we've all just gotten more and more shallow. We've gotten increasingly interested in ourselves, and we don't really have a sense of being connected to other people. we're always relegated to some kind of silos. If you're a conservative, then you're going to be consuming conservative content. If you're a liberal, you're going to be consuming the liberal side. Everybody's kind of against each other. And it's ironically the result of all of the things that are supposed to be bringing us closer together. The things that should be drawing us nearer are actually pushing us apart, being used as wedges to divide, to put people into situations where they don't really feel like they're part of anything other than their own island of one. And maybe guys react to that by, getting more into video games. Maybe women react to it more by being fickle on social media. But it's kind of like there's this sense that when you start to be hateful toward people, it's a negative feedback loop. And you get more and more negative. You get more and more hateful because every time you get pushed backward, then you want to lash out at somebody. And then everyone's just kind of going further and further down the rabbit hole of just kind of not caring anymore. And people get treated like there's some kind of a game. It's like people almost go out of their way to see if they can antagonize somebody just because it would be fun to see what the reaction would be. Like dogs that have been kept in a kennel so long that they've just got bored and they're neurotic. And so like one bites the other one for no reason at all, just because it's there and it's got nothing better to do other than to see if it can pick a fight. And, when people start to get to that point, isn't it almost a little bit like people being kept in a prison, kind of? Like in a weird technology prison? Where everybody just copes in different ways to the same fundamental problem. The technology is getting more and more pervasive in our lives. Technology is increasingly a world that we escape to because the real world just doesn't have very much good to offer. If that's true, then what do we do? Well, I'm not going to say that we should get rid of the technology. I'm not going to say that we should say that cars pollute cities too much, so let's go back to the era of horse-drawn carts. I'm not going to say information overload is too much, so let's stop printing books and go back to the days when people couldn't read. I'm going to go ahead and say that the world is amazing right now. There's a lot of good in the world. There's a lot of amazing things happening. And even if some of the things that you feel you're experiencing aren't great, that doesn't mean that no one's having a good experience. There's people falling in love every day. There's people with happy families. There's people with rewarding careers. There's all sorts of amazing things happening. It's just the meta is starting to sour a little bit. It's kind of like fat people in America. And maybe I should do full disclosure and tell you the night here as I made this YouTube video, I thought to myself, I would really like to go to McDonald's. So I did. Walked over to McDonald's, got myself 2 cheeseburgers, 2 spicy chicken sandwiches, and a large fry and a coffee. Why? Just because it's good. And it's probably not good for me. But, I always make a point to walk 10 miles a day. So I hope that somehow that calculus works out to atone for my desire for McDonald's. But anyways, the point I'm getting at is people are getting fat. There's a lot of fat people in America. Let's just face it. The reality is people are lazy in the United States. And they're probably getting a bit lazy everywhere in the world, wherever there is affluence and easy access to food and leisure. But what is it that's making this happen? Is it too much wealth? Is it that people are doing too much office work instead of physical labor? I don't know what the solution is to laziness. That doesn't mean that everybody's fat and lazy, but there's a lot of people who are fat and of the persuasion that it's really not their fault. And when you look at their lifestyles, they're the kind of people who would rather drive across a small parking lot than to walk an extra few steps. So you can't help but face the reality there is a correlation between people being lazy and people being fat. Maybe that's not what we want to hear, but that's the truth. Just the same as it's the truth that there's probably a correlation between people being antisocial and people being extremely immersed in technology. Now, that doesn't mean there's not positives too, but I do think it's something that we should think about. And I'm a big fan of games. I'm a big fan of technology. And I think that the meta is it does more good than bad, but it is something we should be aware of. Whenever there's things that drive wedges in between people, you can blame the people, or you can say there's something going on that is making people behave this way. It's like if you have a bunch of rats fighting, you can blame the rats, or you can ask why the rats are fighting. Maybe they're fighting because they're hungry. They're fighting because they don't have food. The solution isn't to punish the rats. It's to fix the fundamental problem that's making them antisocial. And I think in the case of our society, it's not about figuring out a way to make people stop playing games or make people stop using social media or make people avoid technology. Here in my town, we have Hooterites. They're kind of like the Amish. They'll come shopping. They avoid technology for the greater part. I would never look at those isolated people and say that they are better off than a modern society. Just wouldn't be true. They're probably better off in some ways, but they're not better off as a whole because they're isolated. They lack the perspective of the broader world. So what we really need is to find a way to embrace the best and also find a way to temper some of the problems it creates in our society. I'm not sure what the solution is. Not sure how you do that. In all things, though, I know it comes down to moderation. It comes down to trying to understand why people act the way they do and reinforcing good behaviors. And I guess it probably involves letting go of all of those people who tend to be bad actors. Maybe this is where I'll leave it, because I'm sure I'm just kind of rambling now. I think it's kind of like people who drink alcohol. The people who tend to be violent people, if they have alcohol in their system, they tend to be more violent. It's not really the alcohol exactly that's making them violent. It's the alcohol that removes the inhibition and allows what they always were to be more apparent. So maybe in our society, where narcissism can be a thing, where relationships can be treated like they're disposable. That can be a thing. Where hiding behind a screen instead of having real relationships with people can be a thing. We need to find people who are inclined to do the right thing, people who are inclined to have good character, people who don't have those red flag behaviors, and spend your time investing in those, because there's good people everywhere. Don't become jaded just because you've had some bad experiences. Don't blame the fact that the world is changing and evolving and use that as an excuse for saying that no one's good anymore. Or say that we should go back to the Stone Age because, that's just what we need to do. Find people who are the right kind of people, and then spend your time surrounding yourself with them. Because when you take the right kind of a person, it doesn't matter what kind of environment you subject them to, they're going to wind up finding a way to come out on top. I think about how there's people that are like, they go through an abusive relationship, or they go through a bad childhood, and you would think that it would do them some sort of irreparable harm. But the reality is it doesn't. Reality is they actually wind up coming out stronger as a result of it. And that's just a good example of how what melts the butter will harden the steel. And we live in a time where we have more access to knowledge than ever before. We have more access to mental health resources probably than ever before. We have more access to enlightenment and fresh ideas and new perspectives than ever before. We have opportunities to read, to advance ourselves, to connect with other people. We don't really have an excuse. So while there are corrupting influences all around us that can make us listen to our lesser demons, there's also a lot of opportunity for people to heed their better angels. So look for the right kind of people. More important now, probably than ever, is the art of surrounding yourself with people who are going to inspire you to drift in the right direction. And I also think it's important to point out that many times we want to ignore red flags. Like if people do things that are toxic or harmful or cruel or lack empathy, we tend to ignore it. We want to shove it under the rug. We want to say, well, maybe it was just this one time. But the reality is, people pretty much are consistent. Like if folks are not inclined to do the right thing once, they probably aren't going to do the right thing ever. Like it's going to be the same basic thing over and over again until you finally allow yourself to say, okay, I'm going to move on from the people who tend to demonstrate red flags, the people who tend to be toxic, the people who tend to be disrespectful, the people who tend to smile and be nice, but then ultimately you can't count on them. Because technology and the AI revolution and all of the stuff that is happening in the world these days, it's only going to make all of that worse. But that doesn't mean that it can't also be a time of blessings and goodness and positivity in our lives if we choose to accentuate the positive and stop feeding all of those negative things that tend to only lead us to pain. There isn't really any sure solution in life to societal problems. And certainly it's true that there's bad actors in the world that are making a lot of those problems probably worse than they ever have been in the past. But I also think it's true that there's always good in the world. And it's also true that no matter what era you look at, no matter what time in history you go back to, there was always ignorance. There were always people doing things they shouldn't have been doing. And there was always stuff that was just awful, right? Like I could say, well, women are really, fickle and guys are really toxic or whatever it might be. But then like go back a few hundred years or a few thousand years and look and see like how were women treated, in the year 100, are there really any new things going on in the world, or is it just we now can see things in a fresh perspective with a new light that we didn't have before? So it seems like, everything's falling apart in a handbasket. Society is, going totally to pot. And the reality is maybe it's not so much that, everything is worse. It's just we have more visibility of everything, and our problems in society are different. But, Marcus Aurelius said something to the tune of, if you lived 40 years or you lived for, 1,000 years, what difference would it make? Because what is there more that you would see? And, I'm just totally paraphrasing that. But the reality is human nature never really changes, right? You've got top dogs, you got bottom dogs, you got corrupt people, you got good-hearted people, you got all this stuff going on. And no matter how much we want to say, well, this time it's different, the truth is there's nothing really new under the sun. Like the same human vices and ego problems and all that stuff, the desire to manipulate people, the desire to abuse people, the desire to screw up relationships, all of it existed, always existed, and there's always been a silver lining too. Amazing stories of people who've done the right thing, people who have been sources of inspiration in hard times. So I'm going to close with this thought, like, what are we doing to bring light into the world? Like I look at the YouTube algorithm these days, I always see AI stuff popping up, try to unsubscribe from as much of that as I possibly can. And, like one reason why I make content, I want to put out authentic content where I'm just talking from the heart. It's not excellent, high-end, high production value content. It's just hopefully truthful content where we can kind of connect like real people. And in a world where there's more and more AI slop out there and clickbait, well, just being authentic can be meaningful. But it's all comes down to this question of what are you doing to make the world a better place? If you think the world is getting to be more of a toxic place, if you think that tools of technology are being used to do more harm than good, well, okay, that's fine. What are you doing to make the world a better place? If you feel like people are gossiping a lot, if you feel like people don't keep their word, whatever it might be, then I'll also ask that question. Do you keep your word? Are you toxic? Do you say things that are harmful? Do you engage in negative conversations that are at someone's expense online? Do you blow people off just because we're fickle and we have a short attention span? Whatever it might be, try to be a person who has noble values in a world which often feels like it doesn't. And the truth of the matter is, usually if you shine a light, you're going to attract more of what you put out into the world. But if we start to go inward and we start to be critical and we start to have that attitude, world is all messed up, it's not my problem, well, then we are part of the problem. And if we start to say, oh, well, the world is broken, I guess we should just go back to the Stone Age, go back to the way it was in the 1950s. Well, yeah, there were some social elements of the 1950s that probably were better. There's a lot of them that were worse too. So it's not about going backwards. It's about finding a way forward. We could say, till the cows come home, we could say, well, AI is a bad thing, it's doing harm. But you know what the reality is? AI tools, AI is going to be around. It's just another part of the evolution of society. It's going to be there. It can do good, it can do bad. So the solution is not to try to go back toward a wild, draconian interpretation of traditionalism. It's to say we're going to embrace life as it is, and we're going to acknowledge there's problems, and we're going to also acknowledge that there's a lot of opportunities, which are amazing, and then we're going to look at ourselves instead of looking at other people and say, how can we be a force for good in the world, to be encouraging, to be inspiring, to be kind, to be faithful, to be patient, to do all of those things which do no harm and align with the values of treating others as we would want to be treated ourselves. Oftentimes, you cannot reap the benefits of joy until you first learn how to practice a lifestyle of joy. And that can be hard because it means that you have to give what you don't receive before that you can get it back. And it's kind of a test, right? Like we have to learn how to be in a place of joy, and we have to learn how to give good things to others without any intent of having them returned to us, all of that kind of thing. It's when you learn how to be at peace with life and do good to others, even when you don't feel like you're necessarily getting what you want out of life. That's what you have to do before you can actually get the reward of, blessings returning to you. There is a scene of Mount Nebo. What? Moses, right? Moses leads the children of Israel up Mount Nebo and into the promised land. He goes up on the mountaintop and he's off looking over into the valley at the promised land. He spent 40 years bringing the people of Israel into the promised land, and then he didn't go in. He just went up on the mountain and he looked in from afar. And I can't help but look at that, and I think about that story and I wonder, why did Moses not go into the promised land? Was it because he wasn't allowed to? Or was it because he didn't really believe it was his place to go? Sometimes we feel like life is devoid of blessings, and so we stop reaching out. We stop believing that the best is out there for us. We think it's for everyone else. And then we think that maybe it was a curse or our destiny that we weren't meant to be able to, find that relationship or find the success in life that we want, or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's us we have to get over. Sometimes it's not that the world is a bad place, that other people are toxic. Sometimes it's that it's easy to point out the things that are wrong and then use that as an excuse for us not working on ourselves. I've seen it in people a lot. Like folks will say, well, I'm a piece of garbage, I'm a bad person, I'm unredeemable, unsavable. And I've noticed it's a lot easier for people to say that they're garbage and they're worthless and there's no hope for them than it is to acknowledge, what, I have potential, I have ability, I have a chance to do good, and I have to work on myself. It's easier to just say, oh, well, I'm a lost cause. Too bad. Well, okay. Because if you say you're a lost cause and you're still a victim, maybe you're a victim of fate, genetics, I don't know. But you're still saying it's not my problem. My life isn't in my hands. There's nothing I can do about anything. I'm just going to throw up my hands, call it a day. And that's a duality of life. Sometimes you reach success by doing nothing, by letting go, by being at peace. And sometimes there's also a need to do something different, because if you do the same thing every single day expecting the results to be different, you get more of the same thing. And that's really on you. And in a world, I think in a world of technology, we see a lot of trends just exacerbated. Like if you make a bad decision, you see the result of it faster. If you have bad character, the world sees that bad character more. Like take presidents. What happened, in the 80s, if a president made a bad call or said something stupid off the cuff? Well, there was no X or Twitter or anything like that, right? So if the president said something crazy, well, the whole world didn't see it. But now you can have the president of the United States say some crazy, ridiculous thing, post it on social media, and the world's going to see it tomorrow, actually today. And yet it's the same character issue at work. It's not that people are worse. It's just technology is accentuating and really making the things that used to be subtle weaknesses, it's putting them out in the open, and it's showing the true color of people. And that's what's scary, because we're having to face the reality, not that we're getting worse, but that it's now painfully obvious what the content of our hearts always was. But whether we're talking about the year 100 or the year 2025, the solution is the same. Get your house in order, be at peace with God, be at peace with your fellow man, do unto others as you wish they would do to you. As always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time. Thanks so much for watching.